Hi everyone and welcome back. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to come on today and speak about a video that was highly requested. In my previous video, I mentioned the possibility of talking about this topic, and it seemed to be something that everyone was really interested in, so I am coming on. I have not prepared a lot of outlines or I haven't done a lot of pre-planning for this video. It will be more of a stream of consciousness, and then I may make a secondary video that's a little bit more like outlined and may go more into like the specific astrology of the queen or of the nation as well when this happened. But I wanted to start here, and I think that this will help me to kind of organize my own thoughts around this topic, and it might help you all to do the same. So what does it mean, the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the Queen of the United Kingdom, who has been on the throne since February of 1952? So reigning in essence from 1952 until 2022. It is such a huge change for the world. I know that for many people there are probably very different opinions about the significance of this event. For some people it might be more of a political topic, about like the institution of monarchy, which is not really the direction I'm looking to take it from today. I'm looking more so at the collective quantum impact of this experience, more so than the political or sort of sociological impact, though these of course can be very intersecting viewpoints. But regardless of what your opinion is on the institution she represented, her presence and her contribution to the world is a lot more than I think a lot of people can take into account. Despite the British monarchy being quite muted in a front-facing way, despite it being a constitutional monarchy, there's a lot more power there than a lot of people know, and it's a lot more of a sort of epicenter of collective decision-making than a lot of people know. So this succession, this change in crown, has a large significance for the global community at both a political and sociological level. And one of the reasons why it's such a big deal is because the length of time in which she, Elizabeth II, was able to occupy collective consciousness, aside from what she represented, aside from any of that consideration, just her presence in people's minds for such a long time makes this something that really ripples and reverberates, especially throughout countries where there's a strong media presence. So like the US, most of the Commonwealth, most of it, not all of it. And then, really it's quite global, but I think that it's changed everyone's life. I think that it's changed everyone's, everyone who understood who she was or understood what she represented. It has really changed their lives in some way. So the title of this video is going to be Assessing Themes of Permanence, because what's really interesting to me, the day that this happened, I remember exactly where I was, and I'm sure that we will all remember where we were when it happened, the day that she died. That seemed to really shock people, okay? And this is a really interesting thing to me and just a good starting point for the video. It seemed to really be like shocking for people to know that it happened, or as if it were very unexpected, or as if this were some type of like really surprising event. And I understand that it is, just because of the momentum that she was carrying. But at the same time, she was 96 years old. And it's interesting how I think people kind of thought she had achieved immortality or had achieved a certain degree of permanence within her rank, and that has to do with her elevated Saturn and Scorpio in the 10th house. It's almost like a feeling of immortality, or a feeling of never changing or never ending, or never stopping the cyclical nature of her experience, and then the way that that's projecting to the rest of the world with a natal Saturn and Scorpio at the 10th house. And I think that with the other collective transits we've been having, the new world forming, the Uranus in Taurus, the Uranus-Mars North Node conjunction, I think was a really big catalyst for this event. Of course, she is a Taurus sun as well. So I think that the opposition to that Saturn and Scorpio from a lot of the Taurus transits that have been happening over these last few years was the catalyst for this. And you might already be seeing in every other aspect of your life that there is a change in world, or that certain things which have been well-defined, consistent, or never-ending, or even feeling almost immortal in your own experience are now changing. And I really think that her death and her and the succession taking place there is a larger symbol for the change of borders, the change of boundaries, the change of ethics, principles, and also just the change in possessions, holdings, and not just material ones, especially material ones. So like maybe changes in territories, changes in a lot of global political territories will be coming as a result of this succession. That is part of it, but that's happening at not just that macro level, it's happening at the micro level as well. I feel that this is happening individually, where people over this entire last year of 2022 have really been reassessing the permanent fixtures in their life. Do I want that to be something that I tend to or deal with or claim ownership of for such a long, or even potentially like all of my life? So I think that that has been something that has been so on the collective mind recently, is like, what am I kind of connecting to in an immortal way? Very interesting. And it was kind of surprising to me on the day that it happened, on the day that the death of the Queen was announced. I was a little bit surprised. I really expected her to go further. So there is kind of a feeling of the universe really reminding people that even the most entrenched people, things, energies are not permanent. This really has us reassessing themes of permanence, because she, I feel, achieved a certain level of entrenchment, a certain level of guarantee, a certain level of, unchanging or safe, even protected status. And I kind of feel that a lot of people have been striving for that in their own way, have been striving to replicate, based on her example, this feeling of entrenchment, or this feeling of safety garnered through a certain status, or a certain duty repetition, or a certain ability to also spiritually, or as a spiritual leader / worldly leader, to combine or kind of immortalize oneself as a greater service martyr within like a global leadership, or within a certain hierarchy. So I do feel that through her and through her experience, like, hierarchy really was reasserted, and I feel that she reasserted hierarchy in a more feminine, more mysterious way, actually. Like, a lot of people I don't think understood how she did it, or understood how she was able to claim that space, or able to really withstand the weight of the ancient foundation on which she was standing. But nonetheless, she did. And I think that there's a lot of things we don't know about her. And I think there's a lot of things that we never will know about her. I think there's a lot of things that, and it's not like creepy, mysterious stuff. I mean, who knows? But it's more like not revealing the recipe, or not revealing the way that the growth happened, or revealing the nature of the fertilizer with which she grew to the level that she did. There is some kind of discovery I feel that she made, or some type of basically like, and I'm not saying that this happened in a conscious way, but her auric feeling to me indicates some type of very strong alchemical evolution of essence that many people really struggle to achieve. But I do feel that she's created herself as a larger example of like what everybody really can do to like be more durable, to be more strong within their own grounding, and to basically show what consistency and repetition can do in regards to power, hierarchy, and status. Also, I do just feel as kind of a final message about just her, again, like, I may do a video about like the astrology of her chart. I'm not trying to focus just on her in this video. I'm more so trying to focus in this video on the collective experience and on what this means globally. But I really don't think that people knew her. I feel that she had a very strong wall built between her own private experience and then her own public experience. So I think that a lot of people also claim a certain knowledge of her, or even the institution that she was the head of. I think that people think they know a lot more about it than they do, and I think that it is actually a much more complex network of people, a much more complex kind of maze that's going on within that institution, and always probably has been, but now in this 21st century context, with the sort of front-facing limits that are there, yet at the same time the like true reality of the sort of power concentration that's there, it's a little bit complicated. So I also feel that it kind of took an essence like hers that was so perhaps mysterious, yet also normally projecting, or kind of connecting to a more quote unquote ordinary feeling, or a more blended feeling, or an attempt to like blend into a certain demographic that is in a large majority in her territory. What I'm trying to get at here is basically I feel that she represents something that people don't know she represents, and also her institution as well. And I feel that what that is some type of consciousness that people were really romanticizing, or really wanting to embark on themselves, but in reality it's more of a feeling of having to really relinquish one's own true power, or what one's historical or ancient power has been, to blend and essentially survive, or to blend and to acquiesce or satisfies. Okay, so here's something that kind of needs to come through, as I feel that a lot of people really associate her with some type of like very strong semblance of power, which I would not argue, because of that elevated Saturn and Scorpio in the 10th house. I mean, there's really not a power quite like that, but all I can say is I think that it was kind of really hard in a way to be in her shoes, or to be in proximity really to it, because it was a very kind of complicated and honestly grinding feeling of power that was not really able to express itself very directly, but nonetheless was there and had to like basically come out in the like underneath the surface, between the lines, in the ether. It's a feeling of like using symbolism to really express such a deep level of powerful momentum. And I think that while perhaps like a fun game in a way, or even ritualistic and kind of Sphinx-like, also during this era was particularly difficult to sit with, or difficult to be with, or like accept the burden of. Okay, so I'm not really saying that she had a burden. I mean, you could definitely say that she had a burden. It depends on what perspective you want to look at it from, because also there were many, amenities and many, conveniences as a result of having that burden. So that's not really what I'm trying to get at. But I do feel that, of course, symbolism is something that I really look into as well. And symbolism is a huge part of what I talk about on my platform here on YouTube. So I think that she is also very much within that, and she is a very symbolic type of actor, or I should say was a very symbolic type of actor. And I do think that the institution may struggle to really continue that symbolic flair. It's yet to be seen, of course, and I wouldn't really make predictions about it. But I feel that with her death, and this is also like a collective message to me, it says a certain like ending to a symbolic way, to a beneath the surface way, to a perhaps blurred or blended way of expressing, and there is going to be more direct results coming. So let's really segue this into the collective, because again, I would love to make a very personal video and talk about her chart, but I'm trying to kind of talk about the popular effect, because also I'm not so into dissecting people astrologically. I mean, even though she was a public figure, like I don't really like to speak for people, or to speak for people's experiences, or to like label people's experiences. Like I don't feel like that's really anybody's place, whether they're an astrologer or whatever they are. But from a historical perspective, and even like a historical psychological perspective, I think it's very interesting to make hypotheses or to guess or to kind of like assume how things could have been. But I will definitely repeat, like, they are only assumptions. They are only considerations, because again, she was a very symbolic actor. She was not a super direct actor. So there's some stuff that we really just can't know. So, you know, to kind of guesstimate or to use astrology or to use any other tool to, you know, read between those lines, there's always going to be a degree of, you know, like assumption there, and we shouldn't like really think of it as fact. But if it resonates and helps you or makes sense, I hope that it does. Okay, as for the impact on the world, on especially like that country, the United Kingdom, and then the Commonwealth as well. And I mean, even like the United States, like it has a pretty big impact on the United States because it is going through a Pluto return. Of course, the United States, or the set of colonies that would eventually become the United States, were colonies of Great Britain, of the country with which she is the head of state. So it has a big impact on the United States too, given that it's in a Pluto return. And I do think that it's interesting that the United States is, of course, doing the 9 days of flag at half-mast. That's interesting during the Pluto return. That is going to really reconnect, I think, a lot of U.S. people to their feudal ancestry. And I also think that it is a wider window for feudalism to come back through, okay? I don't see, this is interesting, I actually don't see Queen Elizabeth II as a proprietor of feudalism. I actually see her as a proprietor of money and, I don't want to say capitalism because that word has so many meanings. But I see her as more connected to the World War II era, where industrialism and protectionism and also any form of like a state enterprise meets like private markets. I see her as more connected to those people from back then, and this really like forged her. So I really see her as having, perhaps, this is estimation, but this is as a historian myself and as an astrologer, I see her as deeply devoted to the ancient aspects of her lineage and to the ancient meaning of what feudalism or monarchy or aristocracy was. But I don't feel her to have been a progenitor or a someone who is trying to further that cause at all. I feel her as also, or even maybe her entire institution, as being quite conflicted about which way to go with that. Like, do we kind of build up this merchant class, or do we, reassert the ancient divine right side? And I really see her as having moved more towards the merchant side, and then also with certain like free trade agreements, or with certain trade agreements really facilitating the expansion of the Commonwealth, or I suppose also the retention of the Commonwealth. So that is interesting to think about. And I feel that her successor is much more connected to themes of feudalism and much more actually a advocate for older dynastic ways, okay? And I feel that she also had this, but she didn't really project it, or it was a strategy of hers to not really move that forward or to delegate that to other people or something. Whereas her successor, I feel, is completely entrenched in this feeling of reasserting certain like blood power, because again, her Saturn in Scorpio in the 10th house, to me, makes her a representative of some type of like bloodline. I mean, of course, that's monarchy, right? But then also there was a spiritual side to it, as also the head of the church. So all of that kind of combined together to make a good alchemy for her. But I feel that for her successor, that alchemy is a much more self-threatening, or much more absent, okay? So there's something that will struggle there, and especially when it comes to the business interest versus the feudal mindset, which is an old conflict, okay? This is a stream of consciousness again, but it's an old conflict, and I feel that might come back through now. And I also feel that the earth has kind of reconnected to certain themes of like land ownership, or to a theme of like landed aristocracy, landed gentry, it really came back through with the triple conjunction in Capricorn. And I think that it's interesting that the Queen did not make it long past that. Again, I think it kind of shows her as more connected to the business interest or those contingents of people rather than her own nobility, which is also interesting because like the nobility of the UK is very like hidden and very obscure. So you don't like hear a lot about like the dukes or the earls or the barons of the UK. So I feel that they have either gone into hiding or they're really, and this may change, okay, with the succession, or it may not. Because they now have this culture becoming more entrenched for them about being sort of like kept to themselves or quiet or not really engaging in a very like open political way. I'm not saying they don't engage politically, but it's not as open or it's not as connected to media as other like specifically like democratic forms of political action. So anyway, what I'm trying to get through here is that I feel that this is a big change for the collective in like how they connect to certain political action, because I feel that this succession changes the momentum from more of a business connotation to, yes, more of a landed feudal connotation, which for some people, again, I'm not making a statement about whether that's good or bad thing, because they're connected. You know, a business interest also requires ownership and requires themes like that. So they're not that different, but there is a different psychology and there's a different consciousness connected to both sides of that. And again, I feel that her successor is more connected to the more ancient feudal side of things. And for the people and for the, average person who has understood this has happened and the impact that it's had on their collective consciousness, on the collective consciousness of people who knew of her, it's a big opportunity for change, okay? Because I really think that it's a catalyst. It's like a lot of people are seeing, wow, you can do so well, but like at the end of the day, like mortality is a thing. Okay, so I think a lot of people have been reminded of mortality through the death of the Queen. And I think also that people are reminded of the value of time, okay, and the value of what we commit our time to, and in what way do our commitments own us, okay? Because I do feel that while the Queen was such a powerful person, enjoying all forms of immunity and different kinds of privileges, at the same time, there were many limitations on her, and I do feel that in a way it was a form of imprisonment that she went through, while at the same time not being prosecutable. So it kind of like shows the nature of power on the earth plane and the way in which certain limitations do form the more status one achieves. So I think that a lot of us are, on one hand, ready to disconnect from the commitments that we don't see for ourselves anymore, as we kind of observe this new understanding that even she could not achieve immortality, okay? Which is just, I think, poignant, because not that I think anyone ever expected her to be immortal, but I also think that she was the last person that anybody thought was going to die, okay? So it's interesting. It's really reminding people of mortality and reminding people of lack of permanence, impermanence, okay? So with that reminder it's like rippling down, it's disseminating across the masses, this like reminder of like, do with your time something that gives you a sense of duty, gives you a sense of service, but at the same time, beware of the confines that generates, and kind of there's maybe a puzzle coming through, or a bit of a maze there for people to kind of understand how they want to formulate their own time commitments and how people want to be kinder to themselves as well. Also, I do or did feel her energy as an energy that really wanted to liberalize. Okay, I felt her energy wanting to experience peace times, and it is something to say that the world at a global level, of course, there are certain war zones in certain areas that did not experience this, and they should not be discounted or forgotten. But there was generally more time of peace after the end of World War II, and I do feel that she was a player in that, and I also feel that her predecessors were also. And then she kind of continued that. And we do have a big question about the succession of like, will that keep going? Or is there a different type of momentum shaping up there? As it already was kind of starting to, as she was fading. Okay, so we have to, I think, be prepared also as constituents during this time to understand, like, do we want peace still? Okay. And I think that a lot of people take that for granted, and a lot of people have basically lost some degree of dignity or lost some degree of propriety based on the ease that peace has afforded them. And I do feel that she was something that oversaw that peace, okay? Not that loss of propriety, but the peace itself, okay? Whether she was whether she caused it or whether she was able to get that ball rolling, I don't know. But I do think that she was a decision maker in the continuance of certain peace arrangements or of certain lacks of war. As a more like a feminine and yin leader, I do feel like she was kind of anti-conflict at times, not always. But again, what happened under the surface is another story, or what happened between the lines or kind of secretly behind the scenes is another question. However, I do feel at a mass level, at a global level, there was a big kind of like peaceful oversight that she represented, and that could be in question now with the succession. It's not totally for sure. But again, as constituents, you might want to keep that in mind during this time and not forget the importance of peace in certain areas. Okay, so those are things that are going to really be queuing up with this succession as well. And it's not just here, but if I'm looking at it at this angle at the UK, like that's the theme of this video, it is definitely one of the PowerPoints of decision making when it comes to, okay, do we have peace or do we have war? Okay. So whenever there's a succession in the United Kingdom or even in history in other European monarchies, it always brings that question mark, like, will certain previous, decisions of war and peace, will they be continued or will they be rethought? And I wouldn't think that has changed simply because it's a constitutional monarchy. Now there is a momentum and there is a symbolism, and I think as long as that institution exists, it will continue to work and not just be an ornament. I do not think it is an ornamental institution at all. I do not think it is there for tourism. I do not think that it is indirect and hands-off, and I think that was one of her biggest successes, was really being able to project that, and we will see if that projection continues to be successful or not. But again, at the personal level, I think it's just such a poignant invitation to reassess themes of permanence in your own life, and also to take a look at the long-term symbolisms that are at play in your life, the ones that you are supporting especially. So what are you projecting symbolically in your life? I think, shall we say, the archetype of Elizabeth II is very much tied to the projection of symbolism and the way in which that evokes power versus the actual need to intervene, interfere, or actually act. Okay, so with the death of the Queen, I think that's one of the most important things to come through, is like basically what she has evolved in her own ethic and the projection of symbolism that is totally contingent upon is something that I think everybody can think about in their own life and their own experience. And as they do that, I think that her passing then projects or then symbolizes such a greater opportunity for people to decide what they want to take on, what they want to commit to, what they want to be permanent. As you all know, we've been talking about this a lot on this channel over this last year about like, what am I committing my time to? What is the larger story of that? What does it symbolize? What does it appeal to? What doesn't it appeal to? What does it mean? Okay, what is the long-term meaning and the significance of my commitments? And we start to see like just what commitment does get you through her experience. And I won't define for you what that was. But nonetheless, there is mortality as well. And there is only guaranteed impermanence. regardless of how permanent, repetitive, cyclical, or legacy invoking our actions are, there is no immortality. So we have to kind of do what matters, don't we? We have to bring love into the equation. We have to have meaningful experiences, or we have to allow ourselves or be liberal enough within ourselves to allow ourselves the meaningful experiences we yearn for, to allow ourselves love, to allow ourselves some degree of commitment that brings safety and protection, but be careful about that too. I feel that she has a certain symbol about that in its negative as well, or in its detriment, about the over connection to commitment, the over connection to service, and what it has really given, okay, and what it really gave, and what it took as well, not just from her, but also from others, and from a lot of territories. So as we move forward from this, and as we kind of go through a mourning phase, as we go through a reorientation probably over the next year, and as we reorient ourselves to the new geopolitical motions that also result from this, and the changes in the quantum collective consciousness, which is not something that should be discounted. Again, I think that a lot of people in their conscious mind had connected to her as a certain permanent fixture, or as a certain permanent symbolism, and had actually kind of revoked from her own mortality at a level of thought by the collective towards her, okay? Which is not something that probably should have happened. So there's going to be a little bit of a knot there, I feel, in the collective consciousness about how we also dehumanize figures, or how we dehumanize or immortalize certain political, worldly, or spiritual human leaders. So that's going to be something that has to really be worked out here. And I think that that also leads individuals to maybe even self-dehumanize in a way, or start comparisons of themselves towards these people they've dehumanized. And then you have kind of a major question of humanity, and a major question of like, where is the love in this situation? This is so evocative of the fallout from the Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn of 2020. It's kind of like really dehumanized a lot of people. And I do think that her death is a greater reminder to people, like literally one of the strongest people in the world, you know, had mortality. And that might really ripple, okay, especially as I'm communicating it or articulating it in this way. I think that it will ripple through a lot of us, and have us maybe doing things that matter more, okay, with our time and our commitments, and really seeking those meaningful and love-oriented aspects of life, alongside a degree of commitment, service, and duty. Again, part of her archetype deals with the rewards of commitment, service, and duty. I'm not trying to diminish that, but I do also feel that it was over the top in a way, and something that was not something people should really have to go through. But there is a lesson also of exaltation, I feel, within it, yet also dehumanization. Okay, so we have this feeling of like, once somebody elevates to a certain level, are they like a human anymore? Yes, of course they are, but like maybe not in the eyes of other people, which is not an easy place to be, or not a place that many people would like to be, even if they think that they would. So basically what I would say, if you're someone who's been like thinking a lot about this event, or if you've felt connected to this event, the death of the Queen, it's probably trying to pull through a certain collective symbolism about love, meaning, significance, and then also commitment and service, and how these things can fall into a greater balance, and also like what maybe doesn't need to continue in your own life, okay? Because I feel that her death, unlike really any other that I've seen happen this year, you know, in the public and within like figures or really prominent people who are prominent in the collective consciousness, I feel that it is a big moral about, regardless of how exalted, how well with public relations you are, regardless of how supported by like 1,000-year institution or lineage, like there is not nonetheless immortality. And that's hard for people to see, even in much like smaller circumstances. So it's a big adaptation, I think, that a lot of people have to go into, a larger phase of adaptation where people live for more meaningful, and when I say meaningful, let's unpack that a little bit, like more striking life experiences or more love-filled natural life experiences rather than constructed, mechanized or leveraged life experiences based on a certain consensus. Although we are nonetheless moving into a much more consensus-based time at the same time. So it's hard to deconstruct, it's hard to work with, and there is a feeling of perfection, there's a feeling of unachievableness, there's a feeling of empathy as well. As when I've looked at her chart, I've found her to be a much more like a empathetic or kind of more emotional person than she is portrayed as. So I also think that how she was portrayed was not very authentic, honestly. And I don't think that, monarchy or I don't think monarchy is a place for authenticity or a place for organic authenticity. I think that would be seen as quite vulnerable. So of course she's kind of from a different time, right? Like all these notions of authenticity and organic context is a very kind of new thing, and I'm not trying to say this about her to like hold it against her at all, but I do feel that that's hard, like to be in that place and to be projected or to self-project. I'm not quite clear on that, whether it was a self-projection or whether she was like projected by a bunch of other people as this kind of like really steel and kind of like unfeeling or kind of metal Teflon person, is somewhat connected to her chart with that Saturn high in the chart in a Scorpio in Capricorn's house. But there's so many other places in her chart that are like really soft and really really kind of playful and in a way kind of like, I mean, I don't even know if I should say that, but like kind of like childish, but also circus or carnival or like a mage-like almost. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's something that's kind of like, I think that went highly unexpressed with her to kind of fit, I think, the stoic kind of English culture. And to a degree, I don't see that as having been very like authentic, but more of like a construct or more of a propaganda per se. However, I think that she grew to embody that, and then that's maybe another thing that comes through about her as a symbol or as a moral, is like careful what you project, because you might just bend into that or you might just become that. So people's consciousness really shift to be what they are portrayed as or what they are projected as. So anyway, everyone, that's what I've got for now. Okay. I hope that it's some good food for thought for you. Really think about themes of permanence in your own life. And it's a content form that's hard to do justice because it's such a, she lived to be very old, and there are a lot of nuances to her time. As she was on the throne for such a long time, and also had a lot of people orbiting around her with very different personalities. So, and I also feel that she was somebody who really absorbed people's traits, or was able to really maybe reflect people back. She had a very kind of mirror energy about her as well. So I feel that the different personalities that orbited around her kind of like had impacts on her. And she's very nuanced. So and then also Sphinx-like, and there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that's private. There's a lot that won't be known. Okay. And that's part of maybe that allure and part of the question that comes up and part of what makes her so deeply connected to a lot of people's consciousness because of that curiosity. So within that, there's a lot of maybe knowledge about developing public relations or developing attachment to the collective consciousness, which to me is also a bit of a vampiric type of quality. But that's another video for another day. I hope you all enjoyed it. Think about permanence in your own life. Reassess those themes of permanence, because again, the purpose of this video is more so for that collective side, because I know that the death is very recent, and I, again, would not really assume to make factual statements about things I don't know about people, but I will, kind of stream of consciousness around it, think about it. And again, these are just stream of consciousness ideas. They are not necessarily a reflection of how things truly were for her or for the people around her. It's just what I felt and what I saw coming through during the time that this happened. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're new, hit that subscribe button below, turn on the bell notifications. I have a lot of other nice content on this channel, which you might be interested in. I will link some of those videos below, and I hope you all have a nice concluding year of 2022. What a crazy changing year this has been. What a change. Okay, crazy. Anyway, everyone, I'll talk to you soon. Have a great time of it. Much love. Bye.